Hey there, guys. Thank you for tuning back in to Power by Collective. This is episode 2, and in this episode, we are going to be exploring the notion that self care isn't selfish. Now, this is a topic really dear to my heart because I personally have struggled with what self care means to me, and I'm sure self care means different things to different people based off of just how you were conditioned growing up and, what your pathology is or was, depending on what stage in your self care and, growth journey has been. Now, for me, self care can be broken into different you know, categories, but I would like to start with personal boundaries. Now, the reason why I would like to start with this is because I feel like boundaries, especially in those of the personal aspect, are what end up leading to somebody being in a state of healthy self care. So, what are personal boundaries? Now, I feel like personal boundaries are mental, emotional, and physical walls that we create to protect ourselves from being used, manipulated, or violated by others. So these limits can help us to clearly distinguish who we are and what we need from other people and their needs. Now, creating boundaries is really a key way to cultivate physical, emotional, as well as psychological well being, because without boundaries, we run the risk of confusing our needs and wants with others, which ends up leading to codependency. Now, this is a whole other topic that I will get into in the next episode, but just to touch on it, codependency describes a toxic, one sided type of relationship dynamic um, where there are no boundaries. It ends up creating a risk of experiencing heightened stress and feelings of hopelessness. So, this is where you'll find somebody overcommitting to everyone and everything, and ending up making them feel or leading to a serious toll on their mental health, which can lead to burnout or worse, a nervous breakdown. Now, lack of boundaries can also result in feelings of being worthless, weak, or even not good enough, which is chronic self doubt and self loathing, in other words. So, not being able to voice our truth and communicate our needs in a clear way can be very, very distressing. So now that we know exactly what personal boundaries are, I'm going to get into the signs that you may have poor personal boundaries. The reason I want to break down the signs is that many of us sometimes have behaviors and habits that we are really not aware of, because it's been part of our conditioning and other people also play a factor in it, especially if you grew up in a sort of narcissistic or manipulative type of background. Um, and it's all right. So, let me just break down these signs. So maybe it will shine a light on an area of your life you may be very unaware is hurting you more than it is helping you. So, signs of poor personal boundaries. Failing to speak up when treated badly. Giving away too much of your time. Agreeing with people when you actually feel like disagreeing. Saying yes when you really want to say no. Feeling guilty for dedicating time to yourself. Feeling taken for granted by others. Being in relationships where you are always giving and the other is always taking. Making too many grand sacrifices for others at your own expense. Being passive aggressive and possibly even having manipulative tendencies as a way of regaining lost power. Constantly feeling like you're a victim, feeling as if you have to earn your respect by being, you know, nice and accommodating. Feeling guilty when others aren't happy, as if that's your responsibility. Being who and or what, sorry, other people want you to be or need you to be for them, and not who you need you to be. Another sign is that you may be out of touch with your own needs. You may not even know what your needs are. Attracting people who tend to control or dominate you. And finally, having chronic fear about what others think about you or of you. Sound familiar? Yeah. So this is quite it's a really layered kind of topic. So I hope now you see why I wanted to break it down. So if you are feeling triggered, it's okay, it's all right. Just this is part of self-care. You can pause the video and just take a breather. But for the rest of us, we're going to continue, and I'm going to go into why we end up suffering from poor personal boundaries. Now, as children, we really had no control over what our parents, our teachers, and the adults around us taught us. Most people who possess absent or weak personal boundaries were really set a bad example, to be honest. Observing codependent dynamics within our families contributed a lot to this issue, as well as being taught that love equals what we did and not who we were. Deep, right? I need you to really pause for a moment to reflect on this. Were you only given love when you pretended to be who your parents or your family wanted you to be? Are you still only given love when you pretend to be who others want you to be? Were you only rewarded when you went out of your way to sacrifice your own needs and desires in favor of someone else's? Now, this one is especially tied into the aspect of, how we are taught in religion to forsake our own needs and, in favor of other people's. And this is going to, be brought up in the codependency episode. But just take some time to think about it. Were you punished for saying no or speaking up growing up? Are you being punished currently in your relationships when you say no or you speak up against somebody? Did you feel obliged to continually take care of an adult? Are you still feeling obliged to emotionally take care of any adults around you? Now, these questions are really important because these are just a few signs that you were taught, that lacking personal boundaries equal to a good thing. Now, it's really important that as you contemplate about these, you do not per se give out blame or dish out blame to anybody. It's part of healing. It's part of getting out of the whole victim mentality because, for example, I was able to get out of my own victim mentality by learning that things happen for me and not to me. The reason why I say this is, and I know this may be a trigger for most people, is that when you decide that things happen for you, you decide to see the lesson in everything. But when you feel like things happen to you, then that's when you end up sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into the whole victim mentality, you know? Now, next, we're going to jump into 5 myths about personal boundaries. Now, the first myth is what, inspired the title. And the first myth is having personal boundaries is selfish. Now, you need to know that this is a really, really unhealthy perception because having personal boundaries is a form of self respect and part of processing good self esteem. Yes, let that sink in a little bit. Number two, having personal boundaries will cause my relationships to suffer. Now, my friends, any healthy and supportive relationship will actually thrive, and encourage the establishment of your personal boundaries. Don't let anybody guilt trip you into feeling like your relationship, any type of relationship for that matter, will suffer because of you taking care of yourself, because you cannot give love to somebody, you cannot give care to somebody, you cannot give financial assistance to somebody, you know what I mean? If you do not have it yourself, okay? So just let that sink in. You can, pull this back if you need to. Number three, having personal boundaries will cause people to dislike me. I really struggled with this one, and it took me a while to, first of all, not even care about whether people dislike me or not, because the people who really gravitate towards you, who are really honest to you, or genuine in their relationships with you, will not dislike you because of you giving yourself the care that you need. Now, this statement of having personal boundaries causing people to dislike you is only partly true, because the reality is that yes, setting clear boundaries might step on a few people's toes, especially if those people are manipulative. But they will also cause more people to respect, hear, and like you. So there is nothing more admirable than a person who refuses to take bullshit from others. Yes. Now, number four is having personal boundaries will make me miserable. Listen, it may feel uncomfortable at first setting personal boundaries, but pretty soon it turns into feelings of empowerment, happiness, and balance. I promise. It really does. Number five, having personal boundaries sounds rigid. Now, boundaries can change anytime. So just because you have certain boundaries in place, don't think that they can never change. Life itself changes all the time. So, boundaries are flexible and can be flexible according to your current needs in the moment. Now, how do we create personal boundaries that aren't ignored? This is super important. So, when you're learning how to create personal boundaries that are not ignored, you need to know that creating boundaries is less about other people and more about you and the beliefs and mindsets that you have. So, the following practices are really going to help you target both your core beliefs and your habitual behavior. First, you need to understand that you have the right to have boundaries. I repeat, you have the right to have boundaries. Now, lurking underneath the surface of people pleasing behavior is the belief that we have no right to set boundaries. But it's time to challenge this ingrained assumption. I know conditioning is It's hard to break. That's why it's called conditioning. It's literally hypnosis. It's literally mind control. Now, listen to me. Why would others be allowed to have boundaries and not you? Why must you feel like a lesser human being and elevate others above yourself? It is a fundamental right for all of you to have personal boundaries. So take the time to establish boundaries that define and protect you and your needs. And if you don't know what your needs are, it's okay. Just take your time. As you set up your boundaries, you will end up finding out what works best for you and what doesn't work for you. Next, you need to understand that your thoughts, feelings, and needs are equally important to others. Nobody's thoughts, feelings, or needs are above, quote unquote, anyone else's. Social status notwithstanding, your needs are equally important to those in your life. Disagree with those who try to make you think or feel otherwise. And if they try to make you feel a certain way, then that's an indication that those people are not meant to be around your life. Now, with creating personal boundaries in this respect, if you have certain or live around certain people with this type of mentality, all you need to do is just not be around them because you always have a choice. Um, I know that it's really hard because sometimes people make you feel like you have no choice, but you always have a choice. Next, explore your needs. Likely, you don't have much experience or knowledge of what your needs are, especially if you ignore them to cater to other people's demands. Now is the time to start learning more about yourself. You can start by keeping a daily journal, um, practicing meditation and introspection to help you become more in tune with what you really need at any given moment. Because I feel like, I do yoga. So for me, mindfulness it really has been a powerful way of knowing what boundaries I need to set. So I highly recommend that you dedicate time to self-discovery practices to learn more about who you are and what you really want to be and what you really want out of life. Number 4, practice daily self-care. Why? Because you are worth it. Yes. Now, when you get into the habit of nurturing yourself, you are already setting yourself up for success. You are sending yourself the message that I am worth taking care of. In fact, you should pause this and write that down. If you have to stick it on your mirror, put it on your phone as a wallpaper, you are worth taking care of. You can repeat this to yourself as many times as you need to. Simple ways to take care of yourself include taking time to relax, practicing meditation, as I said previously, making yourself good food, not junk food, but good food, exercising, setting daily goals, complimenting yourself, rewarding yourself, taking a nap, connecting with nature, drinking a soothing cup of tea, or whatever, drink floats your boat. But I would not, you know, recommend alcohol for this specific practice. Next, you need to learn to say no. Saying no is a key part of learning to be assertive and honoring your needs. You do not need to flat out aggressively say no if the situation doesn't call for it. You can use phrases like, no, thank you, or I'm not able to at this moment. But just learn how to say no. Next, identify when people cross the line. Now, I know it's not always easy to identify when others overstep your boundaries, particularly when you're not used to having any. So just take time to note down each day all the moments when you felt uncomfortable, upset, or disrespected by somebody. Now, this helps in developing more self awareness. So just try to notice when you feel sensations like uncomfortable butterflies in your stomach, tension, or an increase in blood pressure. This will definitely manifest, when you feel flustered by somebody. Also, feeling hot, sudden heat flow through your body is a trigger to help you tune yourself to the present and practice assertiveness. The next one is really important. You need to stop overcommitting. You aren't obliged or indebted to uphold every single social commitment you have. Try to not please others at your own expense. And finally, the icing on the cake. Be courageous. Let go of toxic friendships and relationships. Fake friends and flimsy relationships of any shape or form will inevitably self destruct and fizzle away. Now, this might leave you feeling guilty, ashamed, or like you're doing something wrong. Setting boundaries is your fundamental human right. I repeat, setting boundaries is your fundamental human right. You are worth it. Those who are trying to control, use, or abuse you will try to stop you, but do not let them hold you back. Cut away the pollution and seek out supportive and uplifting relationships. Learning how to learn is the key to change. Don't ever forget that. And the ultimate superpower is your self awareness. In general, you know, the life you end up living are the lessons you end up teaching, and it's a culmination of all of your experiences that tend to open you up to what you are okay with, what you cannot tolerate anymore, um, and just how you want to live your life. I feel like we are in a really self transformative kind of time in our lives right now. And that's why I decided to talk about this topic today. So if this resonated with you, don't hesitate to drop a like, share it with somebody who you think needs it. You could drop a comment as well, letting me know if you have any topics in particular you'd like me to talk about on OMPower. But until next time, I send